teach me good judgment and knowledge, for I have believed thy commandments. Before I was afflicted, I went astray, but now I have kept thy word. Thou art good and doest good. Teach me thy statutes. The proud have forged a lie against me, but I will keep thy precepts with my whole heart. Their heart is as fat as grease, but I delight in thy law. It is good for me that I have been afflicted, that I might learn thy statutes.
Good morning. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. We're continuing today in Genesis 38. Now, Joseph has just been sold by his brothers into slavery in Egypt to Potiphar, the captain of the guard. But this chapter is going to take a little detour, and we're going to learn about Judah and his sons. When it came to pass at that time that Judah went down from his brethren and turned into a certain Adullamite, whose name was Hira. And Judah saw there a daughter of a certain Canaanite, whose name was Shua. And he took her and went in unto her. And she conceived and bare a son, and he called his name And she conceived again and bare a son, and she called his name Onan. And she called his name Onan. And she yet again conceived and bare a son, and called his name Shelah. And he was at Chezib when she bare him. And he was at Chezib. And Judah took a wife for his firstborn, whose name was Tamar. So this is spanning this child's life. I mean, we just got from Judah took a wife of the Canaanites. Oh, sorry, I'm not supposed to interrupt, am I? And Judah took a wife for his firstborn, whose name was Tamar. And Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord slew him. And Judah said unto Onan, Go in unto thy brother's wife, and marry her, and raise up seed to thy brother. And Onan knew that the seed should not be his. And it came to pass, when he went in to his brother's wife, that he spilled it on the ground, lest he should give seed to his brother. And the thing which he did displeased the Lord, wherefore he slew him also. Then said Judah to Tamar his daughter-in-law, Remain a widow at thy father's house till Shelah my son be grown. For he said, Lest peradventure he die also, as his brethren did. And Tamar went and dwelt in her father's house. And in process of time the daughter of Shua, Judah's wife, died. Okay. And Judah was comforted, and went up unto his sheep shearers to Timnath, he and his friend Hira the Adullamite. And it was told Tamar, saying, Behold, thy father-in-law goeth up to Timnath, to shear his sheep. And she put her widow's garments from off her, and covered her with a veil, and wrapped herself, and sat in an open place, which is by the way to Timnath. For she saw that Shelah was grown, and she was not given unto him to wife. When Judah saw her, he thought her to be an harlot, because she had covered her face. And he turned unto her by the way, and said, Go to, I pray thee, let me come in unto thee. For he knew not that she was his daughter-in-law. And she said, What wilt thou give me, that thou mayest come in unto me? And he said, I will send thee a kid from the flock. And she said, Wilt thou give me a pledge till thou send it? And he said, What pledge shall I give thee? And he said, Man, my nose is starting to tingle. Hold on. Well, it stopped tingling. I didn't get to sneeze either. Too bad. And he said, What pledge shall I give thee? Verse 18. And she said, Thy signet, and thy bracelets, and thy staff that is in thine hand. And he gave it her, and came in unto her, and she conceived by him. And she arose and went away, and laid by her veil from her, and put on the garments of her widowhood. And Judah sent the kid by the hand of his friend the Adullamite to receive his pledge from the woman's hand. But he found her not. Then he asked the men of that place, saying, Where is the harlot that was openly by the wayside? And they said, There was no harlot in this place. And he returned to Judah, and said, I cannot find her. And also the men of the place said that there was no harlot in this place. And Judah said, let her take it to her, lest we be shamed. Behold, I sent this kid, and thou hast not found her. And it came to pass, about 3 months after, that it was told Judah, saying, Tamar thy daughter-in-law hath played the harlot. And also, behold, she is with child by whoredom. And Judah said, bring her forth, and let her be burnt. When she was brought forth, he sent to her father-in-law, saying, by the man whose these are, I am with child. And she said, discern, I pray thee, whose are these? The signet, and the bracelet, and the staff. And Judah acknowledged them, and said, she hath been more righteous than I, because that I gave her not to Shelah my son. And he knew her again no more. And it came to pass, in the time of her travail, that, behold, twins were in her womb. And it came to pass, when she travailed, that one put out his hand, and the midwife took and bound upon his hand a scarlet thread, saying, this came out first. And it came to pass, as he drew back his hand, that, behold, his brother came out. And she said, how hast thou broken forth? This breach be upon thee. Therefore his name was called Pharez. And afterward came out his brother, that had the scarlet thread upon his hand, and his name was called Zerah. And then we'll return to Joseph. So one means the... returning back, back to the beginning of the chapter. So this is the story of Judah's sons, Pharez and Zerah, and they're important because they are the line of Judah. I don't remember what happens to Shelah, but we'll get to it. But they are essentially the tribe of Judah. This is the genesis of the real tribe of Judah, because the kings come from Pharez and Zerah. You know, David from Pharez and Zerah, not from this Shelah, not from Shelah, and because it isn't spelled out. It's interesting because in the law of Moses is the not to intermarry with the Canaanites is laid out. And I've been sort of watching as there is a sort of like take not of the daughters of the land, a principle being applied from the time of Abraham when he's looking for a wife for Isaac. And also Rebecca when she was Rebecca when considering for Jacob, because she was out of her mind with the daughters of with the two wives of Edom, Esau. In fact, he took other wives just to please mom, in his own ham-handed way. It was Esau. So he saw there a daughter, whose name was Shua, and he took her, went into her. It's just interesting. It doesn't say. It means he took her to wife, or it seems such, because, it's an interesting story, because while Judah is not, he doesn't come off very well in the story. At the same time, he has this wife, and, it isn't until his wife is dead. I mean, maybe that's more on Tamar, that he is, mentioned going to a prostitute. Not that he didn't seek it out. She kind of laid wait for him. But, catching a man in his weakness is not a bad strategy as far as this is concerned. Now, we see this custom that, in the law of Moses, it talks about raising up seed. But it was already in place before. Like I said, a lot of the law is the continuation of customs and laws that were pre-existing. Now, just like the Ten Commandments, a lot of that is already self-evident. It's not like no one had ever heard of thou shalt not steal before God wrote it down. That's not, some people may have that idea. Oh, it's the first, the Apostle Paul said the heathen are a law unto themselves, in that they excuse and accuse one another. We know, we can figure out a certain level of right and wrong within our personal relationships, and if we open ourselves to that right principle, and seek it out and fear, the retribution of heaven, so to speak, we can find it. That's why there are righteous men in the Bible, quote unquote righteous men whom God has received it with favor, because that's how his grace, he gives us grace. And when we have grace, we can end up like that even when we haven't heard the law yet. You know what I mean? Like, I often use the example of Cornelius the centurion. He is described as a man that feared God and loved righteousness. Or, he feared God. Or whatever. It was something similar to that. I don't know why I forget the exact description of Cornelius at this moment. We don't need to look it up. But that kind of principle, it's not a reaction of God to our being good. That's something I don't want you to get the impression of, because that's the wrong way to look at it. It's that being good means God is giving us more access to himself. In some ways, we're seeing God more clearly when we are acting rightly. You know what I mean? Because acting rightly is modeling how God would act, in any given situation. I mean, not down to, we're following Christ. It is a question of, well, what would Jesus do? I don't like the bracelets and all that stuff. That was a fad. Because we need to learn what Jesus would do. We don't really know what Jesus would do. You know what I mean? But we try to do right, and God and Jesus helps us. And so when men seek that which is right, it's because God has put it in them to look and given them a heart to seek it. So it's like we can't take credit for it, really. But it exists, and the right and the wrong has been seen by men for all time. And so one of those, but they're out of the right and wrong sometimes because man has a kind of a weird, corrupt nature. Not weird, it's corrupt. Certain customs grow up that are, accommodating a bit of our corruptness. Like, for example, the divorce, right? And Jesus himself saying, the Lord permitted this because of the hardness of your heart. Or Moses permitted it. Moses permitted this divorce. It's not a declaration of righteousness to get a divorce. It is a tragic outcome that should not be. But if you do not allow it, what are the options going to be? You'll stay together, or perhaps, kill each other or get killed by, a spouse. So they had customs that already existed, because this is before Moses. And one of those is the idea of raising up seed to a dead brother. If the older brother dies without having any children with his wife, it was considered the duty of the next in line to have a child with his wife and raise up seed to his brother, meaning literally that child would be considered his brother's. So he would not have, it's basically an attempt to prevent someone's line from dying off, And it was considered a sort of an honorable thing to do. Again, now, Onan, or the first one, he is the one who first dies. And it just says he was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord slew him. And also you got to consider that this is the line of Christ. This is the line of Christ through which Christ came, Judah. He came through Judah and Tamar. Not through Ur. Interesting, though, that there was this family sort of in the way. Ur, his firstborn, he gave him to Tamar. So you can see the linking up of Judah's line, but Ur is wicked in the sight of the Lord. Now, like I said, we all have sins. All have sinned and come short of the glory. If God wants to look at us as wicked, it's not hard to do. You know what I mean? If he starts looking at us with the eye of judgment, that's why it's good to fear. Because God slays the wicked. He does. And that doesn't mean nothing can happen. I mean, we die too, but I mean, in our death, we have hope of the resurrection. But he takes Tamar to wife for Ur. Ur gets slain. And then Judah says, go into thy brother's wife and marry her and raise up seed to thy brother. That was what was expected of him. And he knew that the seed should not be his. And when he went to he spilled it on the ground. So he basically withdraws before, lest he should give seed to his brother. And the thing which he did displeased the Lord, wherefore he slew him also. Now here's the thing. God does not have to think that this is the way it has to be. I mean, like, this does not have to be a law that, okay, God wants this at all times. Besides, as Christians, we don't follow the old Jewish laws or customs, and that in the New Testament that was already adjudicated. That's all done. Some people get confused about it, and they read the wrong scriptures, and on some level, there's always that. We got to work and help people come out of legalism, because that's not good. It's not the right. You're getting some fundamental truths about your salvation wrong, and I don't like that. That's not a good thing. It can lead us into all kinds of bad paths. Because once you start on you're the one in control. It's just that means everything's out of control. If you got to do everything, and when you know that it's all in God's hands, anyways. So God does not have to approve of this custom. It doesn't matter. It's the custom. And it's what his brother does in the spirit in which he does it. Like he has sex with her anyways. He doesn't just say no. He has sex with her and then he pulls out. And in that context of that spitefulness, of that, because it says what his mindset was. This isn't going to be my child. I don't want to do this. I don't want to he's doing everything about it, but he doesn't want, he's just being spiteful and of no reason given, except just selfishness, perhaps. Don't want to give it. I know that feeling of spitefulness. I know when I did not want to do something for, something I was set to do or expected to do, but didn't want to do it just because, and nothing like this, obviously, but it's something to do with like, junior high band or something. It was a long time ago. But anyways, so, but I remember the spitefulness that I felt because I was resentful for some reason. Well, I know I was resentful at the time. I don't want to go into the story because it's stupid. It's not really interesting. But, spitefulness can arise. I guess it was a sense of, what would I describe it as? I don't know. I never really went down that road much to think about it because I've tried not to be spiteful in my adult life. Try to grow out of that. It does seem childish. Spite. But sometimes there are obligations put on us and we don't like them. And it's a temptation, especially when it's like the right thing. It's an expectation. This is not, Onan is not married already, and I guess in their culture he could have a second wife to do this. I don't know how that would work if you were already married. I don't know. And so anyways, so he went into his brother's wife and he spilled on the ground, lest he should give his seed to his brother. And God slew him also. It's interesting, it doesn't say how, but he died. Both of them died. And Judah says to her, remain a widow in your father's house till Shelah be grown. He's maybe not quite adult, or, maybe he's 16, 17, or maybe he's 18, 19, and he's just sort of like, well, he's not quite ready, I don't know. But we know it's not too long before he is. But he does not give him to her because he's like, well, lest he die also. It's like he's almost putting on like Tamar has something to do with it. It's like it's not these wicked kids. Like, why is it her fault? Like if marrying her is what's causing them to get killed. No, it's because they're wicked. Judah's too busy with the flocks. He's not raising his little Canaanite monstrosities. Not looking after them. And so they're growing up into spiteful, wicked young men. His friend, Hira the Adullamite, the cave Adullam. So, in the process, so then his wife dies, Judah's wife dies, the daughter of Shua, the Canaanite woman he had been married to. And he and his friend, Hira the Adullamite, what is it? Hira, a daughter of a certain Canaanite. So yeah, he hangs around with this Adullamite. And then there's a certain Canaanite daughter, etc. So she dies, and then and then comes he's going to hang out with his buddy, and she hears, he goes up to Timnath to shear his sheep. And then she goes and wraps herself and hides her identity, which you can imagine that a woman selling herself might want to do, just so they can go places without being seen, publicly advertising their face as being on the street prostitute, especially in such small cultures where you're talking about tiny little city states where everybody knows the locals kind of for the most part. So she saw that Sheila was grown, and she was not given to him to be a wife. And that was supposed to be. She was, putting on widow's garments, but she was young, and she was supposed to be, because for her, being promised a husband is an important part of life. No, she didn't want to be a young widow forever, and she has no child. She's just expected to just wait out her entire life, her fertile years. He's consigning her to a husbandless life if he doesn't give him to wife. Give her to wife, whatever. That and in that society, a woman alone is very vulnerable. And how is she going to sustain herself? There's not a lot, especially as she gets older. She depends often on her children in those times. It's important to have children. It's important to have them around you. It's a better Social Security thing than any amount of government assistance. Because, in the end, nobody's going to be there for you except your family. On your deathbed, the government representatives aren't going to gather around and give you a big old hug and a send-off. They don't care. They're just anxious for you to die and get out of the bed so they can have another bed back. Yeah. So she goes and sits in this open place. And it's not clear to me that she covered herself. It's not obvious. It doesn't say it's like she wrapped herself. She doesn't say she made up her face or so it's not even obvious to me that she went out there with the intention. She might have been just going out to just spy on her father-in-law or maybe see what he's doing. Find out, more information, like, is this coming soon or whatever. But she did take off her widow's garment. So there's a change of identity here. So this is probably intentional, I think, right? Like I said, it's not entirely clear, but I would say it's a pretty safe bet. Judah saw her. He thought her to be an harlot. Okay, so, that to me is a little like when it says the tree looked good for food. It's saying something right there. That's more than people realize, The tree itself that God created that was granting knowledge of good and evil looked good to eat. It was desirable. It was pleasing to the eyes. And he thought her to be a harlot. Why? Oh, why? Why would you think just a woman you saw was a harlot? I've seen harlots a couple times, or thought I did, right? Because, what was that comedian said? I don't hang out places where women dress like this, but I remember he said, not since I was young, he said, well, you may not be a whore, but you're wearing a whore's uniform, which is what a lot of, not a lot, but, a certain number of people do. They go out and they dress up way too whorishly, let's say, and they can give the appearance. Usually, though, honestly, when you've seen the actual ones, like in the news, they seem to go over the top to try to let everyone know what they're up to. Sometimes. I've seen, one time I was at a gas station. I saw this kind of creepy old white guy with a young looking black girl. She looked too young. And she looked, not too young, but like, she didn't look like his daughter. Let me put it that way. And she looked adult. If it didn't, I would have probably said something about it, but you know. But anyways, but like, it looked, just somehow, something about it looked weird. She wasn't dressed up, but she was clean. You know, and I've seen other things where I thought, anyways. But I mean, if you want someone to think you're a harlot, it's not hard to give that impression. You know, sometimes, like I said, they're subtle. I mean, like I know that they don't all look like that. You know, like a streetwalker. But the point is, if someone wants to get noticed and thought of as a prostitute, it's not that hard. So she does what the prostitutes do most likely in her time. You know, that's what she dresses up in such a way so as to be thought of, because, you know, etc. She covered her face. Again, we talked about how there could be reasons harlots did that at that time to minimize their identity exposure, especially to non-customers, I would assume. And, you know, then maybe they leave it on with the customers too. I mean, you know, it doesn't. Some guys, it doesn't matter. You know, you don't have to look deeply into her face, I guess. I never engaged ever with a prostitute, nor did I feel it tempting. Because I don't think I could actually enjoy myself with someone who I didn't know was actually pleased to be there. I mean, the idea was someone was there because they were being paid. That seems like so sad. You know, such a sad thing to resort to. But again, he is sad. His wife has died. You know. So he turned unto her and said, Go to, I pray thee, let me come in unto thee. For he knew not that she was his daughter-in-law. Go to. I was thinking it's interesting the way they, like, what does that really mean? Go to, I pray thee? Why in this context would it say go to? Go to, let us bake bricks. You know what I mean? Let's go to. That makes me think of like the Tower of Babel, right? I'm just bringing up my Bible collection again, my little mount here. Okay, go to. I'm just curious about that just because it's where's my Strong's? Oh. Doing this left-handed is weird. There we go. Come on, Strong's King James. All right. Verse 16 is, let's see, Sheila was grown when Judah. Go to, I pray thee. What does that mean? Maybe I should look at it in a different translation. Boy, this is hard. Oh, there we go. Okay. Yahab, to give. So it's like the root of to give. Come. It's translated ascribe 10 times, choose once, come 4 times, give, here, place. But why doesn't it say go? I don't know. That feels like this is the wrong word. Go to. Whatever. Let's just leave it alone. Go to, I pray thee, let me come into thee. Oh, a second. That just... Really? Now it just makes me want to go like, okay, let's just see what like a modern thought-for-thought translation says. Let's look at the Devil's Own Translation, the NIV. The NIV, and V is for vile. Not realizing she was his daughter-in-law, he went over, come now. Their translation is, come now, let me sleep with you. Yeah, that's what he means, for sure. So, come now is more of go to. It's more of a come. And it's usually translated. It's like, well, it's only translated come a few times. So anyways, come I pray thee, let me come into thee, which is going in to the tent, metaphor for going to bed together. Not a metaphor, euphemism. He knew not she was his daughter-in-law. Because he otherwise wouldn't do this. He would be, of course, because he knows he's supposed to give, he would be in that world. Oh, Sheila's getting there. We're almost ready, Tamar. Almost time. It won't be long now. And she said, well, will you give me, that you may come unto me, in unto me. I'll give you a kid from the flock. And he said, well, will you give me a pledge to send it? And what pledge? And she says, well, your signet, your bracelets, and your staff. Now, three of his personal items together. Some, staff might be some, maybe individually not that unique, but all together, she's going to use that, of course, to as proof of who the father is. You may wonder why she doesn't do this to Sheila. I don't know. It's an interesting thought. Maybe, I don't know. That's an interesting thing. It's interesting that doesn't happen. I suppose that, maybe she was in the way. Maybe Sheila would come along. Maybe it would have been him, but instead it was Judah. I don't know. But he came to her and propositioned her. He asked. She didn't seduce him. She just sat there and waited. And taking advantage of, like I said, his wife has passed away. And now, so he doesn't have anyone at home. And I always think when they married the Canaanites, it must be something about the sex or something. I don't know, because it's like they seem to really dig the Canaanite women, but they're really bad for you. I don't know. I will send thee a kid from the flock, and he said, will thou give me a pledge till thou send it? I mean, I don't actually, here's the thing. Well, like I said, I think it's a combination of nature and nurture. We do have tendencies, weaknesses. Like I said, I have some sexual weaknesses, but one is not, you couldn't give me money to see a prostitute. Even before I was married, even when I was single, I would not have been, I couldn't engage in it. Like I said, it just mentally doesn't work for me. And for a lot of people, there's a lot, some people, I stole when I was young. I did some shoplifting. I got caught because I was bad at it. And so while, I know myself capable of stealing, I don't bother because I know I'm not very good at it and it's wrong. So what I'm saying is I don't I never steal. Let me wave my hand, wave my little sign or whatever, wave my little flag. Ooh, yay me, I don't steal. But it's not, I don't have a lot of temptation to steal. I'm thankful that the Lord puts me not in a position. I mean, I've certainly considered it. There were times when I was really financially bad off. I'm like, how am I going to get all these things? I'm thinking I knock over a bank or something. It's like the idea will come in your mind. I would never more than consider it as a fantasy type thing because it's like, of course, I'm not good at stuff like that. And it's not a good solution. It's not pleasing to the Lord. But it's understandable when you get in a certain situation, you feel that pressure. But some people have poor impulse control. Some people have a tendency to steal. And that can be difficult. But it doesn't mean but we all have different tendencies. And I don't despise someone because they're constructed differently than me. But the thing is, when you combine those tendencies with different cultures, it can create very stark outcomes. Cultures that feed into our worst impulses, like ours is currently doing. It feeds our worst impulses and turns us into creatures of hatred to God, things that God hates. And we endanger ourselves. Our entire nation is in peril, desperate peril. I think it's past that. You know what I mean? The hammer is already swinging down. It's there's no repenting for America. It's too late. No repenting. Not that we're not going to be around for a while, but as far as the hammer's on the way down. And there will be punishment. That's for sure. Especially because we give ourselves over to abominations. We're turning into Sodom and Gomorrah. Not because of homosexuality, because of the totalitarianism. That's what. Too much pride. Pride. We're coming up to Pride Month. Pride, fullness of bread, abundance of idleness, and every abomination. So that's what makes a Canaanite wicked. It's tendency plus culture. Maybe they had some tendencies towards depravity. Low resistance to depravity. And such can be saved by the grace of God in Jesus Christ. But for an example, they were destroyed and cursed. So that's what happened, for an example. And you look at the promise to Israel, that though he chastised them historically and over time, yet he did not make a full end ever of his people. He did not ever neglect his promise, because Jacob still has all kinds of kids around. I know for some people that's gets to be complicated, because everyone wants their race to be the master race, but it's like, I accept being a Gentile, and even people who and it's easy for me because being Mediterranean, Caucasian, being slightly different ethnically. I mean, slightly. I'm only a quarter of that, anyways. But I feature it. It has the weird thing where certain people, I'm not white enough for them, and other people, I'm just black enough for them. As far as what they think, right? You're okay because you got a little of the good stuff in you, a little of the melanin in you. It's I think it's fine. It's funny, but I don't judge people like that. I've learned that you shouldn't through Jesus Christ. I keep thinking about doing another channel, like I said, but also there's things I want to talk about, like how I was raised racist, and what it was like, and all of just the funny things. There's so many stories I could tell, and the white people don't tell because they're afraid, but I'm not. Because I never really did anything horrible or anything. It was just things I observed. The adults do things the adults told me. Just things that were just, that's the way it was. When I have told them to, a couple of these stories to black guys, and they were like, they thought it was refreshing to just hear how it really was. Because at the time, and there was no hatred. I didn't grow up with any racial hatred, but it was, like I said, there's a lot of racism just in things. Race consciousness, all this stuff. It's like, it's not. That's why people want to be the Jew. We're the real Israelites. We're the true, in Christ, I know we are also Israelites. We are also the seed of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob through the promises. We are made part of that family through the blood of Jesus. His blood's on me. I have his blood. And so I am the blood of Judah. I have I have his blessing and also his acceptance. But it's not to take away from the fact that my standing is one of a Gentile who grew up in Christ, which is, like I said, that's not much different than when Paul talked about the advantages of being a Jew. Anyways, and so he gives the pledge, and he goes into her, and she conceives by him, and she gets up and goes away, and put away the veil, put on the garments of her widow. Went back to just normal. She's just Tamar waiting for Shelah. And Judah sent a kid by the hand. He sent his friend, the Adullamite. But he couldn't find her to get the pledge. He wanted his ring and bracelets back. Maybe they were more valuable than the kid. Or maybe they were about as valuable. I don't know. It's not that they were going to be necessarily like these. He didn't balk. Or maybe he was just, what would we say? Well, horny enough to not care. Guys will be like that. Men are vulnerable like that. When they're given over to that. Thankfully, I've always been happy to, but not always. When I was young, it used to just drive me nuts. But when I'm now, the Lord blessed me that I get nervous and tend to flee women who try to press themselves on me. I don't really like it. I don't know why any guy would. Honestly, it's a weird reversal of roles. The man is supposed to be the initiator of things, And I don't know, all the boldness and stuff. But anyways, Judah senses he can't find her anywhere. He asked the men, "Where's the harlot that was openly by the?" And they're like, "There was no harlot in this place because they never even. She was there only for like a day. They never even saw her. She didn't have. She timed her appearance there perfectly to basically just run into Judah." So the Adullamite, I forgot his name, but whatever, they just call him the Adullamite. He returned to Judah and said, "I cannot find her." His name was up higher. It was like Bilham or Hira. Why can't I remember his name? Probably because I didn't think of it as noteworthy. And why can't I? Whose name was Hira? It was close, wasn't I? I think I said Hira, which is more. No, it's probably Hira, because they didn't have that long I. Well, never mind. A lot of times when you see the I's, they're supposed to be E's in pronunciation in other languages. They would produce that I sound with something else, like an A-E. A diphthong, as they call it. Okay, where am I? All right, here we are. So, there's no harlot. They can't find her. And Judah said, "Let her take it to her, lest we be shamed. Behold, I sent this kid, and thou hast not found her." I think what he means by that is let her come and get it. Let her take it then, lest we be shamed. Wandering around with a goat looking for a harlot. It's going to, like, you find your whore yet? So, I mean, it's like, it's not something he wants to, though he tells his friend about, "Hey, I got to pay a whore. Would you go get my stuff?" I don't know. It's just and it's interesting that there's such sordidness in this story. You know what I mean? It's a very real story. I mean, it's a story of real things that happen to real people. Not my life, but this is the sort of beginning of Israel. And even Judah, the father of kings. Judah, who was, in the line of Christ. Tamar, thy daughter-in-law, hath played the harlot. 3 months after that he gets this message. Oh, she's played the, that's the funny thing is, that is not literal. That's a figure of speech. That's a way of saying she's been adulterous or gone and fornicated. Played the harlot doesn't mean they don't know she actually had played the harlot. That's why it's funny here. That's a bit of humor when they say, I mean, it's rather funny that they say she had played the harlot when they don't know that she literally played the harlot, because this phrase is usually not literal. It means someone has, when a girl goes out and has sex with guys, she's playing the harlot is the way they describe it. Whoring around. We still use, we still call girls that sleep with a lot of guys whores, even though they're not prostitutes. But that's what people will call them. She's a whore, and that's the words they use. Very, it's a pretty insulting term too, right? It's considered an insult, even though they're supposed to be. Well, sometimes it isn't, right? So I'm such a whore. It's like they love to be what they are. Some people rejoice in their wickedness. That's the kind of societies they grew up in Canaan. Let's sacrifice our babies and be whores. That's why Canaan was destined for destruction. That's why we're on the slab too. And also, behold, she is with child by whoredom. And Judah said, "Bring her forth and let her be burnt." Because she was espoused, technically, to Shelah. Because that gave Judah dominion over her, as she is, because when, like in the law, it's not burned, but it's stoned. When a betrothed damsel, who's betrothed to another man, goes and has sex, that is a death penalty. If you're set to marry someone else, you'd have to call off the engagement first, at the very least. But because fornication itself is not, it's not as common, because Well, women that fornicate don't earn the respect required to become wives and then have a stable life. It's not a good life to be a whore. But it's sometimes it's all the life people could get. So I mean, I'm not trying to. I mean, someone who's trying to survive this way. Recreational whoredom is what it's kind of talking about. She doesn't need to be having sex with guys to survive, right? And then often when it says play the harlot, it has no idea of getting paid either. You know what I mean? In fact, it says when it talks about Jerusalem and Samaria as these two whores, I believe it's in the book of Ezekiel, but it might have been in one of the other prophets. In this particular formulation, it said like, you're not like other whores, because whores usually get paid, but you pay all your lovers. I'm not sure if that was actually in Ezekiel. But he was remarking on this remarkable thing that a whore should pay for her own services. Because that's the kind of life they were living. And indeed, today, women live out their lives fornicating and not getting paid for it. And they don't even know how their value drops. They don't know how much they really lose. You know what I mean? Because it's like, that's why when you're 35 and you still can't, where'd all the good men go? They found the good girls and they got married a long time before you got to wondering about it. The good men are never going to marry you because you're a whore. I would, you can't sleep around, for decades. You shouldn't at all. Honestly, every step away from virginity is diminishing of your value as for betrothal, so to speak, to someone to consider to marry. And it's just because a man is going to be much more impressed with a girl who's kept herself. He's going to be much more, that is very attractive, And as you pile up partners into the dozens, to the scores, how can any man, why would I respect that? Why would I trust such a person either? Why would I want to commit myself to someone who's committed to being a whore? Anyways. So I don't think, I would never dream of bringing back such customs. Jesus, when he was confronted with the woman who was taken in adultery, he said, go and sin no more. And so, but under the law, it is when you're betrothed, now I would say you just escape, just be thankful you didn't marry her. But even if they did, there was the one cause for which Jesus allowed divorce. He said, saving for the cause of fornication. Fornication is not adultery. Adultery, of course, is a reason for divorce. It's the Old Testament called for the death penalty for adultery. So, you're loosed from the law of your husband after, because even if you don't carry out that sentence, right? Like if your partner commits adultery, especially adultery indeed, not just, because if you're Jesus held us to a very high standard of even our eyes have to be pure. But wives, you can't do that because your husband, that's too high of a burden. The Lord helps us keep ourselves, but, it's something that, I remember telling my wife, I don't know how I could stop feeling lust in certain situations without not feeling it towards you either in certain situations, because there's certain things that are provocative, triggering, to lust. You have to be, you should be able to watch people talk and interact with people in normal life, which I have no problem with, without being like subjected to all this lust. Some people though, they're so consumed by it, they got to undress people with their eyes, all this stuff. And it's one thing to be provoked by pornography or something, stuff you can stay away from. If we have problems with, being in public, we really got to work on that, because we need to be able to interact with our fellow humans without being consumed with lustful thoughts. But even so, whatever your husband's lust problem, and the fact that, yes, that is spiritually in the same category as adultery, and the Lord wants us to take it just as seriously, You know, actual adultery was what was under the law, death penalty. And so if a spouse goes astray from they've kind of killed the marriage. You know what I mean? It'd be entirely up to the other spouse as to whether they want to resurrect it. And I do believe it can be resurrected after adultery, but you got to understand, in a sense, that is death to any marriage. Infidelity. It's killing it. Even in secret, you're killing it. So, anyways, but the betrothed damsel who fornicated, I said Jesus gave that as one of the few reasons. If she had sex before marriage, you can divorce her. That's basically what it's saying. Like, if you expect, and I've said this always, if you're expecting a virgin and you find she isn't a virgin, you have every right to divorce her. Now I realize sometimes the girls aren't virginal because of, like, you know, if they do a lot of horseback riding or something, or something can happen like that. And okay, as long as it's not some sort of based on some lie, you know what I mean? But, you know, you suppose girls will lie. And also they do weird things to avoid losing their actual virginity, which is also kind of, because I consider that kind of stuff, it's not exactly virginal, but it's kind of like you're still a whore. You know what I mean? Even though you've maintained your technical virginity by not allowing yourself to be penetrated, to be quite blunt. Vaginally, to be quite blunt. There are other places to penetrate, of course, to be quite blunt. That still makes you a whore. In that sense. It makes you playing a harlot. Now, Jesus said, go and sin no more, so we don't carry out death sentences on people for adultery and fornication. But it may mean the end of the relationship, and justifiably so. You know, that's it. It's the end. You're loosed from the law of your husband. You're loosed from the law of your wife when they die. And if they commit adultery on you, they kind of died. I mean, you can regard them as dead, and you're self-freed from the law that binds you to them. Technically, you know, I do believe that. You know, that's why it's an automatic divorce, so to speak. Even though you still have to follow the law, obviously, and get a divorce, and who knows how that goes. Get a lawyer. You know, I feel sorry. I'm glad to have a faithful wife and to have been faithful, because it's paid off in so many ways to have a long-standing, good relationship with a person of the opposite sex. We've cooperated and worked together for years, and it's been nothing but a blessing to me. Even though at times it's been a challenge, those challenges were blessings, though. You know, they worked all. I could readily see all the good that those things worked. Some things, you know, that we go through tough things, and it's not exactly obvious at the time what good is working in it, but we trust and believe. But all the things I went through with my wife, I see the fruit of it. And I don't have to like wonder if there was any good in it. There was nothing but good. So Judah's very judgmental here. You know, bring her forth and let her be burnt. Well, you know, that would be technically acceptable, of course, because she was supposed to marry Sheila. And now she's gone and committed adultery. And so to keep girls from violating, when they're promised to somebody, they got to keep themselves. You know, like in the law said, and if you're getting raped, you better yell. You know, and I do agree with that. I don't think it's like on the woman. I hate rapists and rape. Like I said, I got no affinity for such things. Like I said, to me, it's like, that's like, if you don't find a prostitute exciting, you're not going to have much pleasure in rape either. I guess I can't imagine that being enjoyable for anybody, but for some it is. You know, and I get it. I guess when you feel powerless and stuff, and you want to feel power and stuff, you know, I don't know. I like soft power better, to tell you the truth, very often. I mean, because hard power is whatever. You got, you know, I enjoyed. I always say to my kids, I loved football. I loved hitting people, and I love violence. I love being violent. It's fun. It's like the man, testosterone, adrenaline, when it's blowing through you, it's a good feeling. I remember being on the football field, just hitting people, knocking them down, and you know, and I get it. And that can be that urge and that feeling can be channeled into other things, I guess. I've never had rage and adrenaline fueled sexual interest, but whatever. I guess I see somewhere where it could be. I said, some things are kind of strange to me. I don't know them. And other things I probably know too well. Like I said, I don't judge other people's temptations because I have my own. In my own way, I'm as despicable as anybody. That's how I look at it. In my own little way, I'm more pathetic and despicable, or just as, let's say, as any other person. And God could see me that way if he chose to. He could look at my life and judge it, but he doesn't, because of the Lord Jesus, because of the faith that he's given me in his son. And so she's like, she has this moment where she brings forth the signet, the bracelets, and the staff. She's saying, by the man who's the R, I'm with child by the man who these belong with. And that's all her defense. And so he acknowledges that it's him. And that complicates it because the man who lays with a betrothed damsel, he was supposed to be killed too, I believe. They both die. Because that's like intercepting another man's wife. If she should die, he should die too. I believe that was the case. Let me look that up. I can do that without going online. That'd be fun. See how much time I got. Not much time. Yep, I gotta leave soon. Okay. Well, we'll make this the final thing, because we're just about done here. I just had a tingling in my nose. Let's just look up betrothed damsel. Betrothed. Actually, that's good enough. Betrothed. Betrothed. No, it's about betrothed her. Oh wait, let's see. If he has betrothed her unto a son. All right, hold on. Oh, yeah, here. Okay, that's different. But again, here we go. Curse the deaf, defraud the neighbor. That is not betrothed. That's a bondmaid. Let me see. Huh? All right. All right. If a damsel that is a virgin be betrothed unto an husband, and a man find her in the city and lie with her, then shall ye bring them both out unto the gate of the city, and ye shall stone them with stones till that they die. The damsel, because she cried not, being in the city; the man, because he hath humbled his neighbor's wife. So thou shalt put away evil from among you. See, they were both to be stoned. Both. If a man find a betrothed damsel in the field, here's an interesting one. This is the presumption of innocence here. If a man find a betrothed damsel in the field, and the man force her and lie with her, then the man only that lay with her shall die. But unto the damsel thou shalt do nothing. There is in the damsel no sin, worthy of death. For as when a man riseth against his neighbor, and slayeth him, even so is this matter. For he found her in the field, and the betrothed damsel cried, and there was none to save her. That is the presumption of her innocence. So, if it was in you could see a very strong protection. Like I said, it's not just like, just stone girls if they have sex. No, if he forced her in the field. Now again, she needs to come forward with this, obviously, as soon as possible. And see, and here's the fornicators. If a man find a damsel that is a virgin, which is not betrothed, and lay hold on her and lie with her, again, she has to be a virgin. When she's not a virgin, all this stuff goes out the window. Nobody has to worry about non-virginal daughters in the law with that because nobody cares. That's how it went. And honestly, there's still residuals of that. People think it doesn't matter. Oh, it does. It does. When you find out the quality of husband you're going to end up with. If a man find a damsel that is a virgin which is not betrothed, and lay hold on her, and lie with her, and they be found, then the man shall give unto the damsel's father 50 shekels of silver, and she shall be his wife, because he hath humbled her. He may not put her away all his days. He doesn't get to divorce her. So that, again, that's kind of off the screen there. That's an interesting thing that gets added on there. He can't divorce her. And there's also rules like if she doesn't want him, she doesn't have to. There's like a whole thing they go through. That's kind of like something with a shoe or something. Like, I forget. Anyways, let's just look back at our text really quick because we got to wrap this up. Yeah. She hath been more righteous than I. It's like, he knew that this is his sin. He acknowledged that she had something coming. She was expecting a husband and sons or daughters, whatever, children. This is something women wanted in life. They still do. Many do. They want a husband and children. And she'd been promised that and been waiting for that. And he, has power over her because she is, there's a contract of marriage pending. But he had failed to fulfill his contract. And he knew her again no more. That means he did not sleep with her anymore. This was it, the one time. He acknowledged them, and then it came to pass, this travail. We're going to leave it there because I really have to go. But that's fine. This is just the story of the birth, and we'll get into Joseph and his time down in Egypt. So there we go. Judah and the origin of Pharez and Ezram. Like I said, we haven't talked about these verses, and I literally can't stay here anymore. So I can't do anything more than this. All right, thank you for joining me. Ta-ta.
Teach me good judgment and knowledge, for I have believed thy commandments. Before I was afflicted, I went astray, but now I have kept thy word. Thou art good and doest good. Teach me thy statutes. The proud have forged a lie against me, but I will keep thy precepts with my whole heart. Their heart is as fat as grease, but I delight in thy law. It is good for me